If you've ever stepped outside on a cold morning and felt your chest tighten the second the air hits your face, your body just sent you a warning most people over 60 ignore for years. After 60, that tightness isn't just cold shock. It's your cardiovascular system responding to a specific trigger that happens in seconds. And 7 out of 10 adults dismiss it as normal aging. But here's what changes everything. This symptom appears at an exact moment, follows a precise biological pattern, and reveals how your arteries are handling stress right now. The timing isn't random. When cold air touches the thermal receptors in your face, your blood vessels constrict instantly. Your blood pressure spikes, and your heart works against suddenly narrowed arteries. If this happens consistently, your body is telling you that your vascular system is responding more aggressively than it should. This isn't weakness. It's a measurable process you can control with one simple adjustment before you step outside. The part that nobody explains is why this reflex becomes dangerous after 60, and what that tightness is actually measuring inside your chest. If you feel chest tightness when cold air hits your face, after 60, your body is warning you. If you've ever stepped outside on a cold morning and felt a sudden tightness across your chest, you might have brushed it off as just the shock of the temperature change. Most people over 60 do exactly that. They assume it's normal, that cold weather affects everyone this way, and that it'll pass once they warm up. But here's what most seniors don't realize. That tightness isn't just discomfort from the cold. It's your cardiovascular system sending you a direct signal that something important is happening inside your arteries. And after 60, that signal matters more than it ever did before. The timing of this symptom is critical. It doesn't happen randomly throughout the day. It happens at the exact moment cold air makes contact with your skin, particularly your face. Your body follows a clock, and so do the signals it sends. When cold air touches the thermal receptors concentrated in your face and neck, your body triggers an immediate cardiovascular response. Your blood vessels constrict, your blood pressure rises, your heart rate increases. All of this happens within seconds, and that chest tightness you feel is your heart working harder against suddenly narrowed arteries. After 60, your vascular system doesn't have the same flexibility it once did, and that makes this reflex response much more demanding on your heart. What makes this particularly important is that this isn't a sign of weakness or inevitable aging. It's a biological response that reveals how your cardiovascular system is handling stress. If you feel chest tightness consistently when cold air hits your face, your body is telling you that your arteries are responding more aggressively to cold than they should. This is a measurable, controllable process. It's not something you have to accept as just part of getting older. The pattern is in the timing. Same trigger, same time of exposure, same response. That consistency means there's an underlying mechanism you can address. The reason this happens more intensely after 60 is that your blood vessels lose elasticity with age. When you were younger, your arteries could dilate and constrict smoothly without creating significant strain on your heart. After 60, that process becomes less efficient. The sudden constriction triggered by cold exposure creates more resistance, and your heart has to pump harder to maintain blood flow. That increased workload is what you feel as tightness. It's not imagined, it's not psychological. It's your cardiovascular system operating at a higher stress level because of a biological change in your vascular tissue. Understanding the timing of this symptom gives you control. Once you recognize that cold air hitting your face is the specific trigger, you can take targeted action to prevent it. You can protect your face and neck before stepping outside. You can warm up gradually rather than moving from heated indoor spaces directly into freezing air. You can monitor how your body responds and notice if the tightness is getting worse or more frequent. The point is this: your body isn't random. It's on a clock. When you learn to read that clock, when you understand that this tightness happens at this specific moment for a specific biological reason, you're no longer reacting blindly to discomfort. You're responding intelligently to a warning signal that your cardiovascular system is under strain. And that awareness is the first step toward protecting your heart. Why your blood pressure rises 5 to 10 points every winter after 60. You might have noticed that your blood pressure readings are higher in winter than they are in summer. Your doctor might have mentioned it, or you might have checked it yourself at home and wondered why the numbers keep creeping up, even though you're taking your medication exactly as prescribed. This isn't coincidence, and it's not a sign that your medication has stopped working. It's a biological pattern that affects nearly every senior, and the timing of this increase follows a predictable seasonal rhythm. Meta-analysis studies show that blood pressure rises by 5 to 10 points systolic during winter months, and for people over 60, that increase can push controlled hypertension into a dangerous range. The reason this happens is rooted in how your body responds to cold temperatures over time, not just in isolated moments. When the temperature drops, your blood vessels constrict to preserve core body heat. That's a survival mechanism that worked perfectly when you were younger and your vascular system was more flexible. But after 60, this chronic vasoconstriction throughout the winter months creates sustained increases in vascular resistance. Your heart is pumping against narrower arteries day after day, week after week. The result is a measurable, consistent rise in blood pressure that doesn't resolve until the weather warms up again. What makes this pattern particularly important is that it happens gradually. You don't wake up one morning in December and suddenly have dangerously high blood pressure. It builds over the course of weeks as the temperature stays consistently low. By midwinter, your baseline blood pressure might be 10 points higher than it was in August. If you were sitting at 130/80 in summer, you could be at 140/85 or higher by January. That difference might not sound dramatic, but it's enough to increase your risk of stroke, heart attack, and kidney damage. And because the change is gradual, many seniors don't notice it until they experience symptoms like headaches, dizziness, or fatigue. The timing of this seasonal pattern also affects medication management. If your doctor prescribed your blood pressure medication based on summer readings, that dosage might not be sufficient to control your blood pressure in winter. Your body's needs change with the seasons, and your medication regimen sometimes needs to change with it. This is why cardiologists often recommend more frequent blood pressure monitoring during winter months for patients over 60. The goal isn't to alarm you, but to recognize that your cardiovascular system is responding to environmental stress, and that response requires attention. Here's the critical insight. Once you understand that your blood pressure follows a seasonal clock, you're no longer surprised or confused by winter readings that seem higher than expected. You know that the timing of this increase is predictable. You know that it's not a sign of medication failure or sudden decline. It's a biological response to prolonged cold exposure, and it's something you can monitor, discuss with your doctor, and adjust for. The pattern is in the timing. Your body follows a rhythm that changes with the seasons, and recognizing that rhythm gives you the awareness you need to protect your cardiovascular health year-round. What happens inside your artery? Cold air touches your skin. The moment cold air makes contact with your skin, particularly on your face, neck, and hands, your body initiates a series of rapid cardiovascular changes that most people never think about. You feel the cold. You might shiver. You might pull your coat tighter. But what you don't feel is what's happening inside your arteries in that exact moment. Your thermal receptors, which are concentrated heavily in your face and neck, detect the temperature drop and send an immediate signal to your sympathetic nervous system. That signal triggers the release of adrenaline and noradrenaline, hormones that tell your blood vessels to constrict. Within seconds, the diameter of your peripheral arteries narrows and your blood pressure begins to rise. This isn't a gradual process. It happens almost instantly. The vasoconstriction reflex is one of your body's fastest protective responses, designed to prevent heat loss by reducing blood flow to your skin and extremities. When you were younger, your arteries could handle this sudden constriction without much strain. They were elastic enough to tighten and then relax smoothly once you warmed up again. But after 60, your arterial walls are stiffer. The collagen and elastin fibers that once gave your blood vessels flexibility have degraded. That means when your arteries constrict in response to cold, they don't just narrow slightly, they create significant resistance, and your heart has to work much harder to push blood through them. At the same time this vasoconstriction is happening, your heart rate is increasing. The adrenaline surge triggered by cold exposure doesn't just affect your blood vessels, it also accelerates your heart. Your heart is now beating faster and pumping harder against narrower arteries. If you have any underlying coronary artery disease, even mild blockages that don't cause symptoms in warm weather, this combination of increased heart rate and increased vascular resistance can reduce blood flow to your heart muscle. That's why some people experience chest pain or tightness, specifically in cold weather. Their coronary arteries are being asked to deliver more blood at the exact moment when the delivery system is partially constricted. What happens in the minutes after that initial cold exposure depends on how long you stay in the cold and how well your body adapts. If you stay outside, your body continues to prioritize core temperature over peripheral circulation. Blood flow to your skin, hands, and feet remains reduced. Your blood pressure stays elevated. Your heart continues working at a higher intensity. For someone over 60 with hypertension, diabetes, or a history of heart disease, this sustained cardiovascular stress can be enough to trigger a cardiac event. It's not the cold itself that's dangerous. It's the way your body responds to the cold, and the way that response strains a cardiovascular system that's already operating with less reserve capacity than it had at 40. The key insight here is understanding that this process is invisible but measurable. You can't feel your arteries constricting. You can't sense your blood pressure rising 10 points in 30 seconds. But it's happening, and the timing is precise. The moment cold air touches your skin, your cardiovascular system shifts into a higher stress state. Once you understand that, once you recognize that the timing of this response is predictable and immediate, you can take action before stepping into the cold. You can protect the areas of your body that trigger this reflex. You can warm up gradually instead of shocking your system. You're not powerless against this. You're informed, and that information gives you control. The morning walk mistake that increases heart attack risk in winter. Thousands of seniors over 60 go for morning walks every day. And in most seasons, that's one of the healthiest habits you can have. Walking improves cardiovascular fitness, maintains joint mobility, supports mental health, and helps regulate blood sugar. But in winter, that same morning walk can become unexpectedly dangerous if you make one common mistake: stepping directly from your warm house into cold outdoor air and starting to walk briskly without any warm-up. This is one of the most frequent behaviors that increases heart attack risk in seniors during winter months, and most people have no idea they're doing anything wrong. Here's why the timing of this mistake matters. In the morning, your body is just coming out of sleep. Your heart rate is low. Your blood pressure is starting to rise as your circadian rhythm shifts you toward wakefulness. But your cardiovascular system isn't fully prepared for physical exertion yet. When you step outside into cold air and immediately start walking at your usual pace, you're asking your body to do three things at once. Adjust to a sudden temperature drop, increase heart rate and cardiac output to support exercise, and deliver oxygenated blood to your muscles while your blood vessels are constricting from the cold. For someone over 60, especially if you have high blood pressure, diabetes, or any history of heart disease, this triple demand can overwhelm your cardiovascular system. The biological mechanism behind this danger is straightforward. Cold exposure triggers vasoconstriction and adrenaline release, as we've discussed. Exercise triggers increased heart rate and demand for blood flow. When these two stresses happen simultaneously, without any gradual preparation, your heart is forced to work at near maximum capacity within minutes of leaving your house. If you have any blockages in your coronary arteries, even partial ones that don't cause symptoms at rest, this sudden surge in demand can create a mismatch between how much oxygen your heart muscle needs and how much it's actually receiving. That mismatch is what causes chest pain, and in some cases, it's what triggers a heart attack. The additional factor that makes winter morning walks particularly risky is the air you're breathing. When you inhale cold air rapidly during exercise, it can cause bronchoconstriction, a tightening of the airways in your lungs. This makes it harder to breathe deeply, which means your body is getting less oxygen at the exact moment it needs more. For seniors with any degree of coronary artery disease, this combination of reduced oxygen intake and increased oxygen demand creates a perfect storm. Some people experience this as shortness of breath or a feeling that they can't catch their breath. Others feel chest tightness or pain. And some don't feel anything at all until the damage is already done. The solution isn't to stop walking. It's to change the timing and preparation. If you warm up for 10 to 15 minutes indoors before going outside, if you start your walk slowly and gradually increase your pace, and if you protect your face and airways from direct cold air exposure, you dramatically reduce the cardiovascular stress of winter exercise. The point is this: the danger isn't in the walk itself. The danger is in the sudden transition from rest to exertion in cold conditions, without giving your cardiovascular system time to adapt. Once you understand that the timing of how you start your walk is just as important as the walk itself, you can adjust your routine and keep walking safely all winter long. Why your heart races when you step out of a hot shower in cold weather. If you've ever taken a hot shower in winter and then felt your heart racing the moment you stepped out into the cooler air of your bathroom, you've experienced one of the most abrupt blood pressure swings your cardiovascular system can face. Most people don't think twice about it. The heart racing feels temporary, maybe a little uncomfortable, but it passes quickly once you dry off and get dressed. What most seniors don't realize is that this moment, this specific transition from hot water to cold air, creates a sudden cardiovascular stress that can lead to fainting, falls, and in some cases, dangerous arrhythmias. The timing of this response is immediate, and for someone over 60, it's a risk that deserves attention. Here's what's happening inside your body during that transition. When you're standing in a hot shower, your blood vessels dilate. The heat causes your peripheral arteries to open wider, which increases blood flow to your skin and lowers your overall blood pressure. That's why hot showers feel relaxing. Your heart doesn't have to work as hard to pump blood, and your muscles receive plenty of oxygen-rich blood. But the moment you step out of that hot water into cold air, your body detects a sudden temperature drop. Your thermal receptors, especially those on your face and neck, send an immediate signal to constrict your blood vessels. Within seconds, your blood pressure spikes as your arteries narrow rapidly. The problem is that your heart is still adjusted to the low-pressure, high-flow state it was in during the shower. When your blood vessels suddenly constrict, your heart has to immediately pump much harder to maintain blood flow against that increased resistance. Your heart rate jumps. You feel it pounding. For some people, especially those with underlying heart rhythm issues, This sudden demand can trigger an arrhythmia, an irregular heartbeat that feels like fluttering or skipping. For others, the rapid blood pressure change causes dizziness or lightheadedness. And for seniors who already have balance issues or take medications that affect blood pressure, this is the moment when falls happen. The real danger isn't just the heart racing, it's the potential for fainting. When your blood pressure swings rapidly from low to high and your heart struggles to adjust, blood flow to your brain can temporarily decrease. That's what causes the lightheaded feeling. If that feeling progresses to fainting, and you're standing in a bathroom with hard tile floors and sharp edges, the consequences can be severe. Even worse, some people faint while still standing in the bathtub, where the risk of drowning is real. This isn't a theoretical concern. It happens often enough, particularly in winter, that cardiologists specifically warn older patients about the hot shower to cold air transition. What you need to understand is that this response is predictable. It happens at a specific moment, the transition from hot to cold. Once you know that, you can take control. You can warm your bathroom before showering. You can lower the water temperature gradually before stepping out. You can sit down on the edge of the tub for a moment after turning off the water, giving your cardiovascular system time to adjust before you stand fully and expose your whole body to cooler air. These are small changes, but they prevent a sudden cardiovascular stress that your body, after 60, doesn't handle as smoothly as it once did. The timing of this response is precise, and your awareness of that timing is what keeps you safe. If you get the flu after 60, your heart attack risk multiplies by 6. This is the most important connection most seniors don't know about. If you get the flu after 60, your risk of having a heart attack in the week following your infection multiplies by 6. Not doubles, not triples, multiplies by 6. That's a staggering increase, and it has nothing to do with coughing or feeling weak. It has everything to do with what the flu virus does to your cardiovascular system while you're sick. The timing of this risk is specific. It peaks during the first 7 days of flu symptoms and remains elevated for several weeks afterward. Understanding why this happens and what you can do to prevent it could genuinely save your life. Here's the biological mechanism. When the influenza virus infects your body, your immune system responds with a powerful inflammatory reaction. That inflammation isn't localized to your lungs or throat, it's systemic, meaning it affects your entire body, including the inner lining of your blood vessels. If you have any atherosclerotic plaques in your coronary arteries, even stable ones that haven't caused symptoms, that systemic inflammation destabilizes them. The plaque becomes inflamed. The fibrous cap covering it weakens, and in some cases, that plaque ruptures, spilling its contents into your bloodstream and triggering a blood clot. That clot blocks blood flow to a section of your heart muscle, and that's a heart attack. At the same time this inflammatory cascade is happening, the flu creates what's called a prothrombotic state. Your blood becomes thicker. Your platelets become stickier. Your body's natural clotting mechanisms are activated as part of the immune response, which makes it much easier for clots to form. Normally, your blood flows smoothly through your arteries, even if you have some plaque buildup. But during the flu, that smooth flow is disrupted. The combination of inflamed, unstable plaques and blood that's more prone to clotting creates a perfect environment for a heart attack. And because all of this is happening invisibly while you're focused on fever, cough, and body aches, most people have no idea their cardiovascular system is under severe stress. The timing of this risk is critical. Studies show that the highest danger period is within the first week of flu symptoms. That's when inflammation is at its peak. That's when your immune system is working hardest. That's when your body is most likely to form a clot. After the first week, the risk begins to decrease, but it doesn't return to baseline for several weeks. During that entire recovery period, your cardiovascular system is more vulnerable than it was before you got sick. For someone over 60 who already has risk factors like high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, or a history of heart disease, getting the flu isn't just an inconvenience, it's a direct cardiovascular threat.
Now here's the good news. The flu vaccine reduces your heart attack risk by 30%. That's not a small benefit. That's not marginal protection. That's a significant, measurable reduction in one of the most dangerous complications of influenza. The vaccine doesn't just prevent flu symptoms, it prevents the systemic inflammation and prothrombotic state that makes heart attacks 6 times more likely. For seniors, the flu vaccine isn't optional. It's cardiovascular protection. Once you understand that the timing of flu infection directly correlates with the timing of heart attack risk, and once you recognize that you can prevent that entire cascade with a single vaccine, the decision becomes clear. Your body follows a clock, and so does the virus. Protecting yourself means interrupting that timing before it ever starts.
The body parts you must protect in cold, and why your chest isn't enough. Most people think that if they bundle up their chest and torso in winter, they're protecting their heart. That seems logical. Your heart is in your chest, so covering that area should keep you warm and safe. But that's not how your cardiovascular system responds to cold. The truth is, the most important body parts to protect in cold weather aren't your chest at all. They're your head, your neck, and your hands. These areas contain the highest concentration of thermal receptors in your body, and when cold air hits them, they trigger a systemic cardiovascular response that affects your blood pressure, heart rate, and vascular tone far more intensely than cold exposure to your torso ever could. Here's why this matters. Your thermal receptors are specialized nerve endings that detect temperature changes. They're not distributed evenly across your body. They're concentrated in specific areas, particularly your face, scalp, neck, and hands. When these receptors detect cold, they send signals to your brainstem, which activates your sympathetic nervous system. That's the system responsible for your fight or flight response. It releases adrenaline and noradrenaline, which cause your blood vessels to constrict and your heart rate to increase. This response happens regardless of whether your chest is warm, even if you're wearing a thick coat that keeps your torso perfectly insulated. If your face and hands are exposed to freezing air, your cardiovascular system reacts as if your entire body is cold. The biological reason for this is evolutionary. Your brain and core organs need to stay warm for survival, so your body prioritizes protecting those areas. When thermal receptors in your face and neck detect cold, your body assumes that your core temperature is at risk, even if it isn't. It responds by reducing blood flow to your extremities and increasing blood pressure to maintain circulation to vital organs. That's an effective survival mechanism in true hypothermia. But in modern winter conditions, when most people are adequately dressed except for their head and hands, it creates unnecessary cardiovascular stress. Your body is reacting to cold exposure that isn't actually threatening your survival, but the physiological response is the same. What this means practically is that covering your chest while leaving your head, neck, and hands exposed does very little to reduce cardiovascular strain in cold weather. You might feel warmer because your torso is insulated, but your blood pressure is still rising. Your heart rate is still elevated. Your blood vessels are still constricted. If you're over 60 and you have high blood pressure or any history of heart disease, that sustained cardiovascular response increases your risk of chest pain, arrhythmias, and in severe cases, heart attacks or strokes. The pattern that's ignored here is that the body parts that trigger the cold response aren't the same as the body parts that feel coldest. You need to protect the trigger points, not just the areas that feel uncomfortable. Once you understand this, the solution is simple. Wear a hat that covers your ears.
Wear a scarf that protects your neck. Wear gloves that keep your hands warm. These aren't just comfort measures, they're cardiovascular protection. When you keep your thermal receptors from detecting extreme cold, you prevent the systemic response that strains your heart. The timing of this protection matters too. Don't wait until you feel cold to put on a hat or gloves. Put them on before you step outside, because the cardiovascular response begins the moment cold air hits your skin. Your body follows a rhythm, and so does the signal it sends when thermal receptors are triggered. Protecting those receptors means controlling the signal, and that control is what keeps your heart safe in winter. What your body is actually doing when you feel warm after drinking alcohol in cold weather. If you've ever had a drink in cold weather and felt a sudden warmth spread through your body, you probably thought the alcohol was warming you up. That's what most people believe. A glass of whiskey or a hot toddy on a freezing night feels comforting, and that warm sensation seems to confirm that your body temperature is rising. But here's what your body is actually doing in that moment. It's not warming you up at all. It's cooling you down. The warmth you feel is a dangerous illusion created by alcohol's effect on your blood vessels. And for seniors over 60, this misconception can lead to serious cardiovascular and hypothermia risks. When you drink alcohol, it causes your peripheral blood vessels to dilate. That means the blood vessels near your skin open wider, allowing more blood to flow to the surface of your body. That increased blood flow is what creates the sensation of warmth. Your skin feels warmer because there's more warm blood circulating close to the surface. But that warmth is radiating away from your core and out into the cold air. You're losing heat, not generating it. Your core body temperature is actually dropping, even though you feel warmer. This is why people who drink heavily in cold weather are at high risk for hypothermia. They feel warm, so they don't take precautions, and by the time they realize they're dangerously cold, their core temperature has already fallen too low. The cardiovascular effects of this process are just as concerning. When your blood vessels dilate from alcohol, your blood pressure drops initially. That might sound like a good thing if you have high blood pressure, but the problem is that your body responds to that drop by activating your sympathetic nervous system. Your heart rate increases to compensate for the lower blood pressure and to maintain adequate blood flow to your organs. So even though you feel relaxed and warm, your heart is working harder. For someone over 60, especially if you have underlying heart disease, this combination of vasodilation, blood pressure fluctuation, and increased heart rate can trigger arrhythmias, irregular heartbeats that feel like fluttering or pounding in your chest. Alcohol also causes dehydration, which thickens your blood and makes it more prone to clotting. In cold weather, when your body is already producing a mild prothrombotic state to protect against injury, adding alcohol-induced dehydration compounds the risk. Your blood becomes stickier. Your platelets are more likely to clump together. If you have any atherosclerotic plaques in your arteries, this is the environment where a clot can form and block blood flow. That's why alcohol consumption in cold weather is associated with increased rates of heart attacks and strokes in seniors. It's not the cold alone, and it's not the alcohol alone. It's the combination of physiological effects that happen when you drink in freezing temperatures. The key point here is understanding what your body is actually doing versus what it feels like it's doing. The warmth you feel after drinking alcohol is real, but it's a signal of heat loss, not heat gain. The relaxation you feel is real, but your cardiovascular system is under stress. Once you recognize that alcohol creates a false sense of safety in cold weather, you can make better decisions. If you choose to drink in winter, do it indoors, where you're protected from the cold. Don't rely on alcohol to keep you warm outside. And if you have any cardiovascular risk factors, Talk to your doctor about how alcohol affects your specific condition. Your body follows a clock, and alcohol disrupts that clock in ways that feel good, but create hidden danger. Why intense hunger in winter after 60 can signal future heart problems. Most people feel hungrier in winter. That seems natural. The cold makes your body work harder to stay warm, so you need more fuel. You crave heavier meals, more carbohydrates, more comfort foods. For most of your life, this seasonal increase in appetite probably didn't seem like anything to worry about. But after 60, intense hunger in winter can be an early warning sign of metabolic changes that lead directly to cardiovascular problems. The timing of this hunger follows a pattern, and understanding that pattern helps you recognize when your body is asking for energy versus when it's signaling a deeper issue with how you're processing nutrients and managing weight. Here's the biological mechanism. When you're exposed to cold temperatures, your body increases its production of ghrelin, the hormone that triggers hunger. Ghrelin is released from your stomach and signals your brain that you need to eat. In cold weather, your body burns more calories maintaining core temperature, so elevated ghrelin makes sense. Your body is trying to ensure you have enough energy reserves to keep warm. But after 60, the problem isn't the hunger itself. It's what you're eating in response to that hunger, how your body processes those extra calories, and how easily winter eating habits turn into long-term weight gain that worsens your cardiovascular risk factors. Winter weight gain is common, but it's particularly dangerous for seniors. When you eat more calorie-dense foods in winter, especially refined carbohydrates and saturated fats, your blood sugar rises, your cholesterol rises, your blood pressure rises. If you're already managing high blood pressure or pre-diabetes, those extra pounds you gain between November and March can push you from controlled to uncontrolled. The weight itself is only part of the problem. The real issue is that winter weight gain often comes with reduced physical activity. It's cold outside, so you walk less, you exercise less, you spend more time indoors, more time sitting, and your metabolic rate slows down. That combination of increased calorie intake and decreased activity creates a perfect environment for metabolic syndrome to develop or worsen. The timing pattern that's often ignored is how gradually this happens. You don't gain 10 pounds in a week. You gain 1 or 2 pounds a month over the course of the winter, and by the time spring arrives, your blood pressure is higher, your fasting blood sugar is higher, and your cholesterol panel looks worse than it did in September. Many seniors don't connect those changes to their winter eating habits because the changes happen slowly. But the pattern is clear. Increased hunger in winter leads to increased calorie intake, which leads to weight gain, which leads to worsening cardiovascular risk factors. And once those risk factors are elevated, they don't automatically return to baseline when the weather warms up. The damage compounds over years. What makes this particularly important is recognizing that hunger in winter is a signal your body is sending. But how you respond to that signal determines whether it becomes a health problem. If you respond by eating nutrient-dense foods, staying as active as you can indoors, and monitoring your weight, blood pressure, and blood sugar regularly, you can satisfy your hunger without creating metabolic damage. But if you ignore the pattern, if you let winter hunger lead to unchecked weight gain and inactivity, you're setting yourself up for cardiovascular problems that will show up in the next year or two. The hunger itself isn't the warning sign. The way your body responds to winter, the pattern of weight gain and metabolic change, that's the signal. And once you understand that signal, you can intervene before it becomes a crisis. The cold air breathing pattern that triggers coronary vasospasm after 60. When you breathe rapidly in cold weather, especially during exercise like walking or climbing stairs, you're inhaling large volumes of cold air directly into your lungs. Most people don't think about this.
Breathing is automatic. You're focused on moving, on keeping your balance, on reaching your destination. But that rapid inhalation of cold air triggers a specific physiological response that affects not just your lungs, but also your coronary arteries, the blood vessels that supply oxygen to your heart muscle. For seniors over 60, particularly those with any degree of coronary artery disease, this response can trigger something called coronary vasospasm, a sudden constriction of the coronary arteries that reduces blood flow to the heart.
Here's how this mechanism works. Cold air entering your lungs causes bronchoconstriction, a tightening of the airways that makes it harder to breathe deeply. Your body does this reflexively to warm the air before it reaches the delicate tissue of your lungs. But that constriction reduces the amount of oxygen you can take in with each breath. At the same time, the cold air stimulates receptors in your airway that send signals to your nervous system, triggering a release of chemicals that cause your blood vessels to constrict, including the coronary arteries. In someone with healthy, flexible coronary arteries, this constriction is mild and temporary. But in someone over 60 with coronary artery disease, where the arteries are already partially narrowed by plaque buildup, this additional constriction can reduce blood flow enough to cause chest pain or shortness of breath. The timing of this response is immediate. It happens within seconds of inhaling cold air rapidly. If you're walking briskly or exercising outdoors in winter, you're breathing faster and deeper, which means you're pulling more cold air into your lungs with each breath. Each breath triggers the same vasoconstrictive response, and if you keep exercising without warming up or protecting your airways, that response becomes sustained. Your coronary arteries stay partially constricted. Your heart is working harder because of the exercise, so it needs more oxygen. But the constricted arteries are delivering less oxygen. That mismatch is what causes the sensation of tightness in your chest, the feeling that you can't catch your breath, or the sharp pain that makes you stop walking. What makes this particularly dangerous is that some people don't feel any symptoms at all. They have what's called silent ischemia, a condition where the heart muscle is receiving inadequate oxygen, but the person doesn't experience chest pain. For these individuals, the first sign of a problem might be a heart attack, not a warning symptom they can recognize and respond to. This is more common in people with diabetes, because high blood sugar damages the nerves that transmit pain signals from the heart. If you're over 60 with diabetes and you exercise in cold weather without protecting your airways or warming up properly, you might be experiencing coronary vasospasm repeatedly without knowing it. And that repeated stress damages your heart over time. The solution here is straightforward, but requires awareness of the timing. If you're going to exercise outdoors in cold weather, breathe through a scarf or mask that warms the air before it enters your lungs. Start slowly to give your body time to adjust to both the exercise and the temperature. Pay attention to how you feel. If you notice chest tightness, shortness of breath that seems worse than usual, or any discomfort in your chest, jaw, or arms, stop immediately. These are your body's warning signals that your coronary arteries are under stress. The pattern is in the breathing. Rapid inhalation of cold air triggers vasospasm. Once you understand that, you can control the timing by controlling how you breathe and when you exercise. What happens to your blood when you have the flu? After 60. When you get the flu, most of your attention goes to the obvious symptoms: fever, body aches, cough, fatigue. You rest, drink fluids, and wait for it to pass. But while you're focused on those symptoms, something invisible and far more dangerous is happening inside your blood. The flu virus triggers a cascade of changes in your blood chemistry and clotting system that creates what doctors call a prothrombotic state, a condition where your blood is significantly more likely to form clots. For someone over 60, especially if you have any cardiovascular risk factors, this change in your blood is what makes the flu a direct threat to your heart and brain.
Here's what's happening at the cellular level. When the influenza virus infects your body, your immune system releases inflammatory chemicals called cytokines. These cytokines are part of your body's defense mechanism, designed to fight off the infection. But they also activate your platelets, the tiny cell fragments in your blood that help form clots when you're injured. During the flu, your platelets become stickier and more likely to clump together, even when there's no injury. At the same time, your liver increases production of clotting factors, proteins that help your blood coagulate. The combination of sticky platelets and increased clotting factors means your blood is primed to form clots much more easily than it normally would. This would be helpful if you were actually injured and bleeding. But when you're just sick with the flu, lying in bed with no wounds or bleeding, this prothrombotic state becomes a liability. If you have atherosclerotic plaques in your coronary arteries or carotid arteries, the inflammation from the flu can destabilize those plaques. The fibrous cap covering the plaque can weaken and rupture, spilling cholesterol and other contents into your bloodstream. When that happens, your hyperactive platelets immediately rush to the site and form a clot. If that clot is large enough to block blood flow through a coronary artery, you have a heart attack. If it blocks blood flow through a carotid artery or travels to your brain, you have a stroke.
The timing of these changes is important to understand. Your blood doesn't stay in this prothrombotic state forever. It peaks during the first week of flu symptoms, when inflammation is highest and your immune system is most active. After about 7 to 10 days, as your body starts to recover and inflammation decreases, your clotting system begins to return to normal. But during that first week, your risk of clot formation is significantly elevated. Studies show that the risk of heart attack is 6 times higher during this period, and the risk of stroke is also markedly increased. For seniors, this week is the danger zone. What you need to know is that this isn't something you can feel. Your blood doesn't hurt when it's hypercoagulable. You don't have any direct symptoms that tell you your platelets are sticky or your clotting factors are elevated. The only way to know this is happening is to understand that it's a normal part of how your immune system responds to the flu. Once you have that knowledge, you can take precautions. Stay hydrated, because dehydration makes your blood even thicker. Don't ignore warning signs like chest pain, shortness of breath, or sudden weakness on one side of your body. And most importantly, get the flu vaccine every year, because preventing the flu is the only way to prevent this entire cascade of changes in your blood. The timing of flu infection directly correlates with the timing of clot formation, and protecting yourself means interrupting that timing before it starts.
Why your blood pressure medication may need adjustment every winter. If you take medication for high blood pressure, you've probably been on the same dose for months or even years. Your doctor found the right dosage, your blood pressure stabilized, and you've been taking it consistently ever since. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. But here's something most seniors don't realize. The blood pressure medication that controls your hypertension perfectly in summer might not be sufficient in winter. Your body's blood pressure follows a seasonal rhythm, and that rhythm often requires medication adjustments to maintain safe control throughout the year. The reason for this is the physiological change we discussed earlier. In winter, your blood vessels constrict more frequently and for longer periods because of sustained cold exposure. That chronic vasoconstriction increases vascular resistance, which means your heart has to pump harder to circulate blood throughout your body. The result is a measurable increase in blood pressure, typically 5 to 10 points systolic, that persists throughout the winter months. If your medication was dosed to keep your blood pressure at 130/80 in summer, that same dose might only keep you at 140/85 or higher in winter.
If this video helped you, the next one might reveal something important about your body. Take a moment to watch it now. You may notice something you've been ignoring.